and welcome to the Actual Tech Media MegaCast. My name is Jess, and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information to cover with you. Let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. Now, if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Also, keep in mind that if you have any tech issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you. So throughout today's MegaCast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all of your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentations. And if we do not get to your question during the webinar, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us today will be following up with you after we wrap. All right, next up on our tour, there are going to be lots of cool aha moments in the MegaCast today, and if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's MegaCast will automatically get added to your post. And our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the Handouts tab for some resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection of solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. And if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes we will be giving away throughout the MegaCast today. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. You do need to be in attendance here live at the webinar in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all winners after we wrap the MegaCast today. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, hey, if you're not sure what those are, no problem. You can find the full T's and C's in that Handouts tab. Again, just click into the Handouts section, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find the full T's and C's waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember here today is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. In today's MegaCast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all the questions asked after the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about winning, and we will get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the MegaCast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going. So let's connect on social. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content right away after we wrap, you want to jump right in, make sure that you subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and to grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you're going to find a link to do that right there in that Handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected after we wrap today. Now, both you and your coworker, your friend, could win a prize, and we actually hold those drawings every month. So be sure you refer somebody awesome before you head out today. It could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your Handouts tab and fill out the application. Then the Actual Tech crew will match you with some vendors that we think you should be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you can choose to join in, like surveys or test running new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you will learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker in your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, how to prevent and recover. The site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. So go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books are going to work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and they are completely free, super easy. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in the handouts tab as well. Okay, well, we've covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in. So let's get rolling.
Thank you, Jess. I agree, everyone. Let's get rolling. Hi, and welcome to the Actual Tech Media MegaCast. Today's topic is enhancing your public, private, and hybrid cloud security posture. I want to start by saying a big thank you for joining us on the MegaCast today. We've got some of the industry's heaviest hitters, and that includes TierPoint and Okta and the SUNY, Rubrik, and Veeam. What a lineup today, huh? It's going to be some great stuff. You can tell just from those names. You're going to get some great training, some great learning, education, and information. But none of it from me. My name is Keith Ward. I am a moderator here at Actual Tech Media, and I am so excited to be guiding you through today's event. Other members of our mod squad include Mackenzie, Scott, and Jess. You've met Jess. You'll be seeing Mackenzie in just a moment. And Scott, well, he's somewhere around, I guess, in the background. Now, we have got an amazing lineup of prizes today. We're going to be giving away 3 Lego Star Wars AT-ATs. Now, I'm not actually sure how that's pronounced. Are they AT-ATs or AT-ATs? I don't remember. My Star Wars fandom kind of faded a few years ago, but if someone could help me out in the comments, that would be great. Are they pronounced AT-ATs or not? Anyway, let me know. We also have $300 Amazon gift cards. We are giving away every 30 minutes. I mean, are you kidding me? What a great lineup of prizes. It makes me sad that I'm moderating this thing instead of attending. So I am not eligible to win, and that really stinks. But oh well, I'll survive somehow. Okay, with that out of the way, folks, why don't we get to the main event so you can stop listening to me talk? Our keynote today comes from Larry Seltzer. Larry is going to be joined by Mackenzie, one of our mod squatters, and they are going to be talking all about this topic today, cloud security and all that important stuff. So Mackenzie is ready to rock, and Larry is with him. So I am going to turn this over to them right now. Gentlemen, start your engines.
Hello, Larry. It is great to have you back on the MegaCast today.
Oh, it's great to be back.
Ugh, I'm so glad. Well, I have a series of questions to ask you, so I'm just going to dive right in. My first question is intended to kind of set the stage for everyone out in the audience and first talk about the challenge at hand. So, Larry, what are the most significant security challenges organizations face when managing a hybrid cloud environment? And how do these differ from traditional on-premise security concerns?
Okay, well, the hybrid model, it is the dominant model these days because it usually makes sense for a variety of reasons, but you do pay a security price. There's your attack surface area. In a hybrid cloud, the attack surface area is much larger and more complicated than compared to a pure on-premises or a pure cloud environment. Data and applications can be spread across multiple locations in on-premises, private cloud, or public cloud. They expanded attack surface. It increases the number of potential entry points for attackers. So that's why a hybrid configuration, like anything in the cloud, requires a shared responsibility model where the security responsibilities are shared between the organization and the cloud providers. Defining and managing these shared responsibilities can be complex and leads to gaps in security coverage if they're not properly addressed. So read the SLA, read your contractual materials if your lawyers go over them. You really have to understand this stuff to make sure that there aren't any gaps in coverage. One of the things people often do badly in these situations, or at least suboptimally, is PKI and data encryption. To do it right, you need centralized key and certificate lifecycle management, or you'll never get it done without a partner that specializes in it. And full disclosure, I do a lot of work for vendors in that space. But a good system for certificate lifecycle management is a requirement for a good system of identity and access management. And that's integrated to all your key applications, which is central to preventing most of the really scary attacks these days.
Okay. So expanding on this, what are the common technologies or strategies right now that are most proven, or sorry, are proven more effective, I guess, in enhancing cloud security postures, particularly in the context of multi-cloud and hybrid environments?
Okay, so a long list. The first thing comes to mind is a SASE service, a secure access service edge, which is kind of the same thing as ZTNA with the zero trust network access. It's a cloud service that acts as a connection agent for everything to connect to your network. For remote clients, it's also a way to connect to services like Office 365 and Salesforce. And these services, they combine many sophisticated networking techniques like software-defined networking and cloud access security broker, and they are run by people who understand how to secure networks better than you and I. Um, these services, they operate on a zero trust model, meaning users are granted access to applications rather than to the entire network. The users have to prove to the service that who they are and that they have the correct privileges. And this, by users, I also mean remote systems that are connected. Um, so all of this minimizes the attack surface I was talking about before and prevents lateral movement by attackers within the network, which is a common vulnerability in traditional VPN setups. But even so, you'll see a lot of enterprises running VPNs along with a ZTNA. And the reason for this is usually that they have to, not that it makes any inherent technical sense, at least not that I can see. Usually it has to do with some service either in or out of the enterprise that's somehow incompatible with the SASE ZTNA or a compliance obligation that like specifically requires a VPN. I kind of wish that VPNs would just go away, but we're not there. Um, okay, I almost forgot. Automate, automate, automate. The more complex things are, the more they require automation. Automation is the only way security will get done these days, and it can also help to get compliance reporting done proactively, which is a big bonus.
Really nice. I like that. Okay, so automate is the word of the day, unless we find another one.
Every
And
day.
so, yeah. So as people go through this process, what are the best practices that IT workers can implement to improve incident response and threat detection capabilities in their cloud environment? And are there any skills that teams should be investing in now to kind of learn, develop, and go along with this?
Well, have I mentioned automation? Because that's a skill you should master. Um, there are many old school best practices that apply to hybrid as much to anywhere, in fact, even more really, like the principle of least privilege.
Mm.
But the big picture of best practices here with the hybrid environment is a combination of automation, planning, and testing. You automate your certificate lifecycle management, automate your IAM, automate your vulnerability and compliance management and scanning, automate incident response, and for heaven's sake, automate software updates. Um, the planning part of that is really the hardest part. Um, Develop plans for incident response for the parts that go beyond the automation I just told you to do. And since we're talking about hybrid networks, the plan has to involve the relevant cloud providers. And the testing part, test your incident response plan. If you don't know if it works unless you actually test it. And you can't just have one test, you have to do multiple and they can't all be the same. Um, these are like these are the things that that make that really reinforce security in a complex hybrid network.
Beautiful. Okay, so we've got to automate, we've got to test. I think the tools are often in this case here. They're available to us. But as we kind of look at what's on the horizon, Larry, I'm curious to ask you, what should people be keeping tabs on, and in what ways could, say, AI-driven autonomous security systems revolutionize cloud security management, and what should people be aware of as they start implementing some of these technologies?
In a way, it's just the same kind of automation idea, but on steroids. The decisions aren't made by a normal program you write that operates sequentially through steps, but it's an AI system that can take a really complex model. It's aware potentially of the most current threat intelligence. A system, a system like that, it's likely a series of coordinated AI systems. It should be, and this is kind of a bold thing to say. It should be just about unbeatable in theory. Now it's possible to think of ways that could get past it, but it's really, and to be sure, this theoretical security kung fu master is not a thing today. It's something that exists, like that it should exist at some point, um, and lots of people are working on parts of it. And they and some vendors have been claiming to use AI in their analysis and backends for many years. I think I wrote my first article about a security vendor claiming they're using AI in 2017. So I wouldn't go looking for AI as a checkbox item when I'm shopping. I'm sure everyone claims to be using it to one degree or another, and they probably really are, because they're all working with enormous data sets, and learning from them makes it, using machine learning really just makes sense for it. In terms of the future, um, well, like I said, everyone's working on AI because it's really the best way to handle the increasing complexity. For hybrid, there's really nothing specific beyond that, but in a way, it's all the more complex because hybrid environments, it's all the more appropriate for hybrid because hybrid environments are all the more complex. So that's what I'd be on the lookout for.
Right. So, yeah, to wrap that up, if I understood you correctly, it's kind of this sense that, the tools are there, they're already being used. It's just a matter of, as data sets increase, as the amount of environments and clouds we're in increase, it's just this kind of untenable complexity we have to manage with. So AI and
Mhm.
training the AI, I imagine, would be kind of your biggest challenge, just making sure you actually teach it to do what you need to do.
Yeah, vendors are working on that as hard as they can, and yeah, that's your future for these things.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna let you go and hand things back over to our moderator to make this an awesome webinar today. But thank you so much again for letting me pick your brain here, Larry.
Okay, thanks for having me again.
Oh, the pleasure was all ours, Larry, as it always is. Thanks to you and Mackenzie for that fantastic overview of the topic today. I've got a poll question up for you right now. Please let us know what your time frame is for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company. Your options here are 0 to 6 months, 6 to 12 months, 12 to 24 months, and not sure. So let us know how you're feeling about that and when you plan on making changes in your infrastructure here. What a great topic we have got today that they were discussing. Cloud increases certainly efficiency, but can introduce complexity that makes it very, very hard to get your work done in a way that it didn't before. So that's what we're all about today: staying secure when there's so many more ways to attack you, so much more attack surface, which is essentially a global surface now. No more walled gardens where you just have to make sure you lock down your web server. Remember those days? I certainly do. I am old enough to remember that. I don't wish for those days again, but they had their advantages as well. So keep voting. We got another few seconds before I move to the very first presentation in our MegaCast from one of our sponsors. And this session comes from TierPoint. And presenting for TierPoint today is Mike Grondal, a cloud solutions architect. Mike, it is so good to have you here today. Can't wait to hear what you are going to say to us, how you're going to enlighten us. So I am now going to turn this over to you, sir.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here today. My name is Mike Grondal. I have over 20 years of IT experience, and I help companies leverage the power of Azure and AWS to achieve their digital transformation, security, and compliance goals. I am with TierPoint. We are a managed cloud service provider. Today I'm going to be speaking on zero trust in the public cloud and some core principles and defense strategies. Let's get started. Here is our agenda for today. First up, an introduction to zero trust and the evolution of the zero trust model. Next, benefits and key use cases in public cloud. Then we will look at core principles of zero trust and 7 pillars framework. And we will wrap it up with strategies to implement defense in depth. So what is zero trust? Zero trust is a security model based on the principle of maintaining strict access controls and not trusting anyone by default, even those already inside the network perimeter. Zero trust is based on the premise that trust should not be automatically granted, whether inside or outside an organization's perimeter. The concept of zero trust implies that you must always assume your systems are under attack and that you must take steps to prevent it. It's designed for the internet, but also enforced on the intranet. State-sponsored hacker groups such as Nobelium use increasingly sophisticated attack methods to try to infiltrate your systems and steal valuable information from customers' businesses. These persistent attackers will continue to probe for weaknesses. You need an approach that matches that persistence. Now, let's talk through the evolution of zero trust. First, in the early 2000s, traditional perimeter security begins to show limitations. Bad actors were finding ways to penetrate the perimeter defenses and gaining access to the internal networks. The term zero trust was coined by an analyst at Forrester Research in 2010, when the model for the concept was first presented. A few years later, Google announced that they had implemented zero trust security in their network, which led to a growing interest in adoption within the tech community. In 2019, Gartner, a global research and advisory firm, listed zero trust security access as a core component of secure access service edge solutions. Today, zero trust is steadily growing across cloud environments, driven by increasing threats and remote work. Zero trust as a philosophy is better suited to modern IT environments than more traditional security approaches. With such a wide variety of users and devices accessing internal data and with data stored both inside and outside the network. In the cloud, for instance, it is far safer to assume that no user or device is trustworthy than to assume that preventative security measures have plugged all the holes. The primary benefit of applying zero trust principles is to help reduce an organization's attack surface. Additionally, zero trust minimizes the damage when an attack does occur by restricting the breach to one small area via microsegmentation, which also lowers the cost of recovery. Zero Trust reduces the impact of user credential theft and phishing attacks by requiring multiple authentication factors. It helps eliminate threats that bypass traditional perimeter-oriented protections. And by verifying every request, Zero Trust security reduces the risk posed by vulnerable devices, including IoT devices, which are often difficult to secure and update. So what are some real-world applications of Zero Trust? Well, replacing or augmenting a VPN. Many organizations rely on VPNs to protect their data, but VPNs are often not ideal for defending against today's risks, as logging into a VPN gives a user access to the whole connected network. Securely supporting remote work. While VPNs create bottlenecks and can slow productivity for remote workers, Zero Trust can extend secure access control to connections from anywhere. Access control for cloud and multi-cloud. A Zero Trust network verifies any request, no matter its source or destination. It can also help reduce the use of unauthorized cloud-based services, a situation called shadow IT, by controlling or blocking the use of unsanctioned apps. Onboarding third parties and contractors. Zero Trust can quickly extend restricted, least privileged access to external parties who typically use computers that are not managed by internal IT teams. Zero Trust has three key principles: verify explicitly, use least privileged access, and assume breach. Let's take a closer look at what they are on the following slides. Principle 1. Verify explicitly. Revalidate identity constantly. You have to ask yourself, is it really the user or end client I'm talking to? Verify continuously. Where is this user or device logging in from? How do I know it's a real user or device? And this applies to user accounts, service principals, managed identities, devices, everything really. And how can we verify explicitly? Well, by looking for anomalies and what risk that may be introducing for every single session and every single resource. Let's add some granular access controls depending on where they are logging in from and which systems or applications they are trying to access. Now, let's take a look at principle 2, use least privileged access. This means giving users only as much access as they need on a need-to-know basis. This minimizes each user's exposure to sensitive parts of the network. And how do we do this? By careful management of user permissions. Remove any access or permissions that are not required for any resource to do its job. And always perform regular audits of permissions. Maybe a user's job duties changed, or maybe they changed departments. We really need to prevent permission creep. Where are users accessing from? With dynamic access control, we can tailor the controls necessary to give a user access based on where they log in from. Let's say they are logging in from another country or an internet cafe. We can force them to use multi-factor authentication, etc., which may not be necessary if they log in from within the intranet. Just-in-time access. We can use just-in-time access controls where a user gets access during only a limited period of time to certain resources. And when the time is up, those permissions are revoked. Least privileged access also creates a micro-segmentation of the areas a user has access to, minimizing the attack surface a bad actor might get access to, reducing the chances of lateral movement. Now, let's move on to principle 3. Assume breach. Always assume there are bad actors on your network. How? By always verifying. Remember principle 1? Always use least privilege. Principle 2. Always validate traffic. Gather signals. Flag anomalous behavior through continuous monitoring and detection. This could be through a SIEM, a security information and event management system, rapid response and remediation. Automate the responses once a breach is detected. Lock down the ports on the firewall, block a certain user account, etc. This can be done through security orchestration, automation, and response platforms, SOARs. Those should be used together with the SIEM system to not only monitor but also act on anomalies. Now let's take a look at defense in depth with Zero Trust. Defense in depth really means applying layered security controls, a staggered approach, if you will. A simple example could be for physical security. You may have a fence and a gate that you need to provide some kind of identification to be able to go through. Then you might have a security guard that will verify that you are who you claim to be and that you have permissions to access the facility. Then you may have a locked door that you need to have an access card to access. The same approach goes for the cloud, but here we have the following layers. Layer 1, identity verification. Rigorous authentication of every access request, especially from remote workers. Layer 2, device security. Managing the security status of devices accessing the network. Layer 3, network segmentation. Limiting lateral movement within the network. Layer 4, data protection. Applying data-centric security measures like encryption, tokenization, and data loss protection. One way we can enable layered and adaptive defense and security with Zero Trust is by using conditional access. Granting access based on real-time assessments of identities, devices, and security posture. Conditional access gathers signals from the different identities and enforces security policies by applying security measures based on things like where is the user trying to log in from? What is the IP location? Which application are they trying to access? What risks does this user pose? Should we allow, block, or allow limited access? Should we force the user to use multi-factor authentication? Should we force the user to change his password? A few examples of this could be, for identity, use multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, passwordless, role-based access control, just-in-time access control. And for endpoints, what type of device is the user or identity logging in from? Is it laptop, IoT device, server, phone? What is the OS version? Do they have antivirus? What's the patch level? If not up to par, force an action, block access or limit access. For networks, use microsegmentation. Limit the attack surface. Always use encryption, even within an intranet. Could be TLS or IPsec. For data, use encryption, tokenization, and data loss protection. Since we mentioned multi-factor authentication and single sign-on previously, let's just briefly touch on what that means for those of you who may not be familiar with these terms. Multi-factor authentication means requiring more than one piece of evidence to authenticate a user. Just entering a password is not enough to gain access. The evidence required to authenticate would be two or more of the following. Something you know. This could be a password, PIN, or an answer to a security question. Something you have. This includes physical items like a smartphone, security token, or a smart card. Something you are. This involves biometric verification, such as fingerprints, facial recognition, or voice recognition. Now let's explain what single sign-on means. Single sign-on is an authentication process that allows a user to access multiple applications or services with a single set of login credentials. This means that after logging in once, the user can access all the connected systems without needing to log in again for each one. This limits the number of passwords the users need to remember and enhancing security. What about defense in depth for endpoints in a zero trust model? And again, with endpoints, we mean laptops, IoT devices, servers, phones, etc. In addition to controls on user access, Zero Trust also requires strict controls on endpoint device access. Zero Trust systems need to monitor how many different devices are trying to access their network, ensure that every device is authorized, and assess all devices to make sure they have not been compromised. This further minimizes the attack surface on the network. Now, let's move on to talking about ways to secure the network from a defense in-depth standpoint. The main objectives covered here are microsegmentation. Microsegmentation is the practice of breaking up security perimeters into small zones to maintain separate access for separate parts of the network. For example, a network with files living in a single data center that utilizes microsegmentation may contain dozens of separate secure zones. A person or program with access to one of those zones will not be able to access any of the other zones without separate authorization. Lateral movement. Lateral movement is when an attacker moves within a network after gaining access to that network. Lateral movement can be difficult to detect even if the attacker's entry point is discovered, because the attacker will have gone on to compromise other parts of the network. Zero Trust is designed to contain attackers so that they cannot move laterally. Because Zero Trust access is segmented and has to be re-established periodically, an attacker cannot move across to other microsegments within the network. Encryption. Encryption primarily protects sensitive data from unauthorized access by scrambling it into an unreadable format, ensuring only authorized parties with the decryption key can view the information. What about data and defense in depth? The three main objectives for data security are Encryption. By encrypting your data, you achieve the following goals. Confidentiality. You protect the data from unauthorized access. Integrity. You protect the data from unauthorized changes. Availability ensures the data is accessible when you need it. Tokenization. A process to protect sensitive data, such as a credit card number, by replacing that data with a surrogate value known as a token. And finally, data loss prevention, a security solution that identifies and helps prevent unsafe or inappropriate sharing, transfer, or use of sensitive data. So, what are some best practices from a zero trust standpoint? Well, you monitor network traffic and connected devices. Visibility is crucial in order for users and machines to be verified and authenticated. Keep your devices updated. Vulnerabilities need to be patched as quickly as possible. Zero Trust networks should be able to restrict access to vulnerable devices. Another reason why monitoring and validation are key. Partition the network. Breaking up the network into smaller chunks helps ensure breaches are contained early before they can spread. Microsegmentation is an effective way to do this. Act as if the network perimeter did not exist. Unless a network is completely air-gapped, which is a rarity, the points where it touches the internet or the cloud are probably too numerous to eliminate. Use security keys for MFA. Hardware-based security tokens are more secure than soft tokens, like one-time passcodes sent via SMS or email. Incorporate threat intelligence. Since attackers are constantly updating and refining their tactics, subscribing to the latest threat intelligence data feeds is critical for identifying threats before they spread. Avoid motivating end users to circumvent security measures. Just as overly strict password requirements incentivize users to recycle the same passwords over and over, forcing users to re-authenticate once an hour via multiple identity factors may be too much, ironically decreasing security. Always keep the end user's needs in mind. Apply the principle of least privilege for everyone in the organization. From executives to IT teams, everyone should have the least amount of access they need. This minimizes the damage if an end user account becomes compromised. With that, we have come to the end of my presentation. Hopefully, you have found this to be informative, but if you have any additional questions about how to assess your current security posture and develop a zero trust strategy, please reach out to us at our website or via the phone number on the screen. Thank you for joining today and have a great rest of your day.
We will do our best, Mike. Thank you so much for that presentation. That was absolutely awesome. And now we've got another poll question for you. We appreciate your feedback on the additional resources you would like to see from TierPoint. Wanted to mention a lot of questions came in for the presentation. We will not be able to get to those today, but TierPoint will be following up with those of you who did ask questions, so have no fear. Keep voting in this poll if you would. I also want to remind everyone about the handouts. We've got a PDF from TierPoint about its managed Azure and AWS solutions, so check that out for more details. Thanks to everyone who's responding to the poll. I'm going to leave it up here for just one more minute or so while I give away our first prize of the day. And that one is a $300 Amazon gift card. And the winner of that prize is Angelica Fleming from Georgia. Congratulations, Angelica. We'll be in touch with you about claiming your prize. All right, everyone, let us move on to our next presentation in the MegaCast today. This one comes from Nasuni, and presenting for Nasuni is our old friend Ben Clark, Senior Product Marketing Manager. It's always a delight to have Ben with us, and he is here and ready to go. How are you today, Ben?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
Just fine,
Hello?
sir.
Oh, perfect.
I'm going to hand you the virtual mic now, and you
All
can
right.
play.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, I have made a few appearances on these megacasts, but thank you everyone for joining. I'm Ben Clark. I'm product marketing manager here at Nasuni. And one of my main focuses is our ransomware solution and security. And so what we're going to jump into today is to introduce everyone with who Nasuni is, some recent research we've done within the market that kind of came up with some great statistics for this topic, and talk a little bit about what we see as key parts of a security strategy for your public-private hybrid cloud security posture, and then kind of go into how we approach that. And so number one, just, because everyone's new here to Nasuni, wanted to talk a minute about what our company really is. Well, Nasuni is a leader in what Gartner calls hybrid cloud storage. And so we work with the main hyperscalers to draw down cloud spend and provide additional capabilities. And I think in the market, hybrid cloud has a few names now, but really what the Nasuni platform does is it's a global file system built for the cloud, delivering infinite scale, built-in backup, disaster recovery, ransomware protection, fast global file sharing, all at local file server performance at a lower cost than traditional file infrastructure, because what we do is consolidate all of our customers' file data into object storage. And so this, if you're familiar with object storage, it's more durable, it's more secure, and generally more affordable. And so this can be done on the Nasuni platform with the three main hyperscalers you see in the middle of the screen, as well as private cloud vendors. I have a good amount of those as well, but just kind of featuring the three main hyperscalers there. And so the Nasuni platform runs on top of public clouds, private clouds. We have a good amount, of customers on-prem with private cloud vendors, and most of them have both public and private. So we have many customers that are using public and private clouds, depending on what kind of workloads they have there. And so we're a file storage infrastructure company, and what the advantages that we bring by putting our customers' file data into object storage on the left here is number one, scalability. So this brings unlimited scalability. On Nasuni, there's no limits to the amount of data they have, the amount of users, file size. And because this is consolidated into a single pane of glass management, can easily be ramped up and down without buying additional hardware. And that's actually where the name came from. We're not a Japanese company, which many people think, but it stands for NAS Unified. Secondly, security. I won't talk about that right now because that's the subject of today. And then finally, the third pillar, edge performance. So frequently used data is cached on-prem or in the cloud regions closest to the users. And so we provide our very low latency and bandwidth issues, no matter where these users are in the world, to kind of provide local file server performance, although your data is in the cloud. And so these edge instances cache that data with the gold copy up in the cloud. So with that, a quick little overview, and let's move right along. So based on this research project we did, we had a few questions on security. This wasn't for our customers, but for organizations like our customers in Europe and the US talking about file data infrastructure. So just to talk to this one, I know this is very obvious, but security is top of mind. We all know it's going to happen, and it's just a matter of when. And the ability to rapidly recover and handle these attacks came up as the two top challenges when managing file data infrastructure. And so, this may be obvious, but that's over, data classification, file synchronization, collaboration over performance, and many of the reasons why you would want to improve your file data infrastructure, looking for better performance, costs, all of these great things. But even with that, security is top of mind. And when you think about it, with organizations, much of the data falls in file shares. And, when we are an infrastructure company, storage infrastructure company, but when we have customers with petabytes of data on the SUNY, security is super important for our platform. Another interesting stat I wanted to point out, because I've seen talks of this recently, I think Gartner has been talking about this as well, is that security is not falling just with the security team. The infrastructure team, when it comes to security for storage and infrastructure, is starting to more and more own and share responsibility with the security team on decisions, purchasing, and handling these attacks. And so having this built into storage technologies is a must. So I thought that was interesting to point out as well. And then finally, so, from this data, what do we see is needed to ensure data resiliency when it comes to your infrastructure? Well, here are 6 super simple points that I think resonate with the presentation before this. But number 1, immutability. You need versions of your data, immutable versions that can't be altered or touched by ransomware and that are easily recoverable. Number 1, that's key. And we found that I think more than half of our survey respondents did not have data that could be recovered easily and have immutable versions of their data. Number 2, mitigation and rapid recovery. It's not about avoiding attacks. It's about handling them, stopping them, getting back to business fast. Zero trust and the NIST framework. There's a reason these are standards within the industry, and having tools and processes that align with them, as you just heard, are super important. Enterprise visibility. We have different teams handling security. We have different stakeholders that need to be involved when an attack happens. So having visibility, into security, whether that is with the SIEM or SOAR tools, or in our case, comprehensive reporting that's super easy to share when an attack happens, is key. And that leads to the next one's reporting and compliance. Reporting has been a huge plus for our customers. So just continuing that point there. And then finally, trained personnel. I think this is an obvious one. You need personnel that knows what to do when an attack happens, no matter what tools you have in place. And it kind of echoes the slide before that and maybe it's the infrastructure team, maybe it's the security team, having built-in security from detection to recovery within the storage platform is great for an infrastructure team that maybe doesn't have the resources like a giant security team to handle by themselves. And so with that, I think we're jumping right into how SUNY handles this from a security point of view. So everyone talks about a multi-layered approach, defense in depth approach, and what we provide is a great layer of protection for file data. And so, thinking about the things I just talked about, it starts with the platform that, is great encryption policies, zero trust, authentication, all those great certifications. But then the star here is with SUNY, the ability to have infinite immutable snapshots or versions of your data. And so instead of relying on backups, Nasuni has a continuous versioning system that is constantly creating a new RPO, snapshot version, whatever you want to call it, every time a new file is changed or created. And so these can be kept for as long as they're needed. We have some of our larger customers with over 1 billion snapshots now, so you can have as many as you want. I don't know why you need that many, but these serve as recovery points for when a bad thing like ransomware or a disaster happens. And because it's just versions of the data, when you do have to recover from a ransomware attack, you're not actually restoring data, you're just dialing back the clock to the version before that happens, which leads us to an extremely fast recovery process, and a 1 million file recovery in less than a minute. So built into the platform, a great layer there. On top of that, fast recovery is great, but if you can't, or if you don't know you're getting attacked, can't stop it, don't know what's happening, it's not going to be that helpful. And so that's where our ransomware protection solution comes in, and we'll talk about that in a second. And then finally, this is protection for your file data on Nasuni. So larger companies that have big security teams, SIEM SOAR tools, we really have focused and are focusing on integrating with as many tools as possible to give a little bit more reach to our security solution and make sure our alerts and the data we are collecting moves on to those security teams. So with that, let's dive back into ransomware protection. And we can see how some of those 6 pillars falls into these sections here. Specifically the NIST framework, you might recognize protect, detect, respond, recover. Your files are protected with unlimited immutable versions. You have fast recovery, but in between there, we're detecting in real time at the edge, not relying on backups, always looking for suspicious file patterns and suspicious behavior at all times, and then alerting and identifying the source of the threat, immediately cutting it off from the system at the edge as well. And then finally, a comprehensive report that can be generated immediately to help provide that transparency, that visibility, but then also to aid with recovery. And one point on recovery, it's not just rapid, but it's important to have precise recovery. And so when we're maybe an attack is stopped at 300 files, you don't have to dial back your entire file shares back to that recovery point or even the volume or the folder, but it's just those specific files that were affected. And so every piece of this solution is built around speed. I think it keeps coming back to that. These companies or all organizations are going to get hit at some point, and handling it quickly and correctly are key. As time goes by, that's when you're getting to a bigger blast radius, more downtime, more users affected, and then all those bad things at the top happen. Your name's in the news, your production lines go down, supply chain and partners are affected. So we really wanted to design this around minimizing the attack footprint and speed. And breaking it down by pieces, each part of the recovery process is built around speed. So detection at all times, in real time, at the edge, instead of relying on backups, not manually, cutting off the attack, investigating where it is, what happened. The attack is stopped automatically, and you have all the details at your fingertips from the incident reporting, which cuts out, that manual stopping of the attack, as well as investigative work and really looking at the details, the forensic work to what happened, where do we recover to. All that details are instantly given to you. And so that investigative work can take a long time. And then finally, fast recovery. So what we're looking at a lot of times, hours to many times days, a whole process in a simple workflow in just minutes that even the infrastructure leads or users can easily handle in that single pane of glass that they always use. Because ease of a plan to get you from detection to recovery is key. Finally, I think I touched a bit on integrations that we find is important for larger organizations that have security teams and are used to using those SIEM and SOAR tools that, you recover your data on Nasuni, but now you can enable secondary actions as fast as possible, maybe through the Microsoft suite. In this case, just kind of makes the story more powerful. And then finally, I don't know where I am on time, but to sum it up, some of the key benefits to having built-in layer of protection within your infrastructure, more consolidation of hardware in the sense of backup and recovery infrastructure, reducing that cyber attack impact on the business, being able to do that with limited resources with a simple workflow, and then finally, when you do have those resources, integrating with those big tools and comprehensive reporting for transparency. So hopefully I didn't go off on a big rant here, but try to sum up those 6 pillars of file data resiliency with how we handle it. And so with that, that's the end of the slides.
Okay, thank you so much, Ben. Hey, great stuff here. While we get the questions ready for you, I'm just going to put up the poll question. Please let us know your answers on what additional information you would like to see from Nasuni. I also want to remind everyone about the Nasuni handout. It's a ransomware data sheet that you can download right now, and it's free. Sounds like a fantastic resource. So get that now while we go through the questions, and remember to keep voting in the poll. Hey, Ben, I learned something new today about the origin of the Nasuni name. I had no idea that that's what it was. So I appreciated that little nugget there. Good stuff. Okay, so let's get into the questions. There's a ton of them here and some really good ones. So Philippe wants to know, how does Nasuni handle multi-cloud interoperability challenge, especially when working with, he mentions the big 3, AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, the ones you talked about in your presentation?
The details on that I think is a little past me, but we do have customers that have the ability to work with multiple of these hyperscalers and cloud replication abilities as well. But let me follow up on that one to give a more accurate answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Merrick has a question that I think a lot of people have, and it is, how is the gold copy kept immutable?
So, whenever files are created or changed, these edge instances that are at different locations or virtually send snapshots up to object storage, wherever whatever hyperscaler you're using, as an immutable snapshot. And, from there, based on the configurations with that cloud provider, it can be replicated as many times as you want, but then has the security of AWS or Azure, or whatever you use. And so when any changes that are made is not going to be to that gold copy, it's going to be to the version at the edge instance, and then we'll go up to the cloud where it won't be edited, touched, and each change and each creation will then create an additional version up there. If that made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's super important, that aspect of immutability. So appreciate that answer. Okay, Brian wants to know, is Nasuni designed for large organizations, or do you have options for small? Let's broaden that to small, medium-sized organizations as well.
Yeah, definitely. We have a wide variety of sizes of customers, from a lot of household names that now have petabytes on Nasuni. Generally we handle files, so it's a great solution for companies like manufacturing and AEC that have multiple locations and need to quickly collaborate globally on complicated engineering files, but it goes the same for smaller companies. I think, anything over 20 terabytes these days with is a fit for us. That's probably on the smaller end, but we just had an interview with one of our smaller AEC customers. I think 2 to 3 locations that were just, well, actually, number one, they, with these pieces in hand, like immutability, fast recovery, got a lot more cyber insurance quotes. It was about the improvement in being able to get cyber insurance, but also the speed of collaboration between their 3 office locations on these complex files increased drastically. So there's definitely options for large, small, medium organizations. Very scalable.
Glad to hear that. So let's move on. Got time for, I think, a couple of more here. You kind of semi-answered this, but maybe this is worth a deeper dive. Adam wants to know, how does Nasuni ensure that ransomware can't corrupt backup snapshots? And how does it handle attacks where ransomware tries to encrypt older versions of files?
Well, I think, the older versions of the files will be immutable versions up in that gold copy in the cloud, no matter what cloud you are using. So no one is really accessing those, changing those. The active file data will be down at the edge. And so they are really not accessible. And, when you have to go back to those older versions, you're really just dialing back. But even that, let me find a better worded answer to these questions. Sure. About not affecting those backup snapshots.
Yeah. Not a problem at all. Okay, let's do one more question, and then we're going to have to let you go for the day. How is file backup different from server backup?
Yeah, well, generally it's a fairly quick operation to restore servers and databases. Many of our customers use products like Rubrik to do this, so thanks on the call as well. But files, on the other hand, can generally take many hours, days, weeks, because the sheer volume of files that customers have, which a lot of times it could be a surprise to them that, they have millions of files of all different sizes. And depending on how they're used or how frequently they're used, it could be super difficult to prioritize and recover. And so usually a ransomware attack forces customers to do a full backup. But with Nasuni, there's no movement of files from any backup media to the production server. And so in addition to that, the restores tend to be extremely precise, like I mentioned earlier, and just limited to the exact files affected with the exact timestamp that is relevant, before anything happens. So we're able to create a super precise process when it's generally very complex.
Absolutely. Okay. Last thing for you. There's so many questions that came in. I want to remind everyone that you will be following up with all the questions that came in today. But also, if someone wants to take that next step with Nasuni, what should they do right after this event ends today?
Yeah, I think a great next step would be just to go to nasuni.com, and on the top right, we have some interactive tours that allows you to actually walk through the process of recovering from a ransomware attack. I think would be a super easy interactive way to kind of see it in action.
Okay. Hey, great stuff. Once again, Ben, thank you for being with us today, for your insights in the Q&A, and for a fantastic presentation. It's been a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
And with that, everyone, keep voting in the poll while I give away a couple more prizes, and then we're going to move to our next presentation. The prize drawing for this presentation is a $300 Amazon gift card and our first Lego Star Wars as I am going to call it, whether it's correct geek speak or not. The $300 Amazon gift card winner is Dave Forrester from North Carolina, and the winner of our first grand prize of the event, the Star Wars is Jeremy Lum from Washington. Congratulations to you both. And with that, let's move on to our next presentation in the MegaCast today. This one comes from Okta, and presenting for Okta is Isla Sharg, Director of Solutions Product Marketing. Isla, thanks for being here today. I am going to turn this over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today's webinar on protecting your organizations from identity-based attacks. Today's session will be pretty quick, but hopefully really impactful, where I'll be sharing the 5 most common identity-based attacks and how you can respond to them. So with that, let's get started. Today's digital world is full of cyber attacks making headlines every other day, but it's not the networks and applications that are being targeted here. It's the users, the employees, the customers, contractors, and partners. And whether it's the use of stolen credentials, privilege misuse, social engineering like phishing, or even just an error, people continue to play an overwhelming role in data breaches. And Verizon's latest DBIR report showed that people were either partially or fully responsible for about 3/4 of reported data breaches. And this is not limited to any particular segment or cohort. This is a scale issue for companies, as every individual that's connecting to your resources, whether it be your employee or your customer or your partner, is really a potential target for a cyber attack. And part of the challenge in securing the human element of our organization is that people tend to choose convenience over security and privacy. It really is just how we're wired. And I think it's a safe bet that there is maybe a handful of you here today that either know someone who reuses a password, or maybe even reuses a password themselves. Or maybe you used to use a password for an account over and over again, for an account that you created years ago, just never went in and updated it with something unique. And it's become nearly impossible for users to keep a unique password for the plethora of services that they have online today. Now, passwords are strongest when they're completely random and not guessable. But we're not wired to remember random strings of numbers and letters, and we are wired to choose the path of least resistance. So people end up reusing their passwords. And to make matters worse, security policies that require a high degree of complexity and forced rotation tends to cause people to revert to patterns to select their passwords. Think winter 2023 or Jan 2024 with an exclamation mark. While these might meet our security policy requirements, they are easily guessable and not really helping secure our organizations. As many employees continue to work remotely, sometimes using their own personal devices, enforcing these security standards has just become even harder. Now, for example, a greater reliance on digital modes of communication can make employees more vulnerable to social engineering attacks like phishing, which introducing more restrictive and inconvenient security policies can result in employees circumventing or ignoring them. And that leaves organizations continuing to fight the decades-long battle between balancing convenience with privacy and security. And the attack landscape is growing in terms of both volume and impact. Motivations and costs for identity-based attacks are the same as all cybersecurity attacks. Adversaries overwhelmingly want financial gain, with 95% of breaches having this as a goal. And it includes extracting a ransom, stealing credit card numbers, or identities to sell on the dark web. Another motivation is espionage, either from a nation state or other threat actors looking to steal sensitive data. And lastly, malicious attacks could be from hackers looking to cause havoc for a number of different reasons. And it could be something as simple as a disgruntled former customer or an employee with a grudge. And these costs for a data breach are continuing to grow. Ultimately, the cost can depend on the system and user accounts that have been breached, but can typically consist of financial losses due to fraud, cost of remediation, increased operational costs, loss of revenue, legal expenditures and regulatory fines, even loss of customers because of lack of trust, or trouble in attracting new business due to ongoing brand damage. And according to the 2023 cost of a data breach report, the average cost has risen to $4.4 million, and it becomes even more expensive when identity is a factor. A data breach initiated by stolen credentials had an average of $4.62 million, while data breaches caused by phishing cost an average of $4.75 million. Now, diving into the 5 most common identity attacks against users to understand what they are, why they work, and how you can secure your organization from them. The first attack that we're going to look at today is called password spray. Password spray is a type of brute force attack, basically trial and error guessing at its best. An attacker will use a list of common passwords to attempt to gain access to many user accounts within a system. These user account lists may be known ahead of time or purely guessed based on other information. And this is successful because there's a tendency to pick simple passwords or not change default passwords for systems. Malicious attackers can exploit this tendency and use bots to automate and scale, making the attack much more efficient and covering much more ground than could reasonably be done manually. And because attackers are quote-unquote spraying multiple accounts, they're improving their chances of success while minimizing the likelihood of getting locked out of accounts due to too many wrong attempts. And here it's purely a numbers game. The end result is access to a user's account on a system, and it really only takes a single compromised account for attackers to be able to gain access, move laterally, install programs such as remote monitoring software, or access sensitive resources. And in last year, 2023, a nation state successfully used password spray to compromise organizations in the defense and pharmaceutical industries using the attack Peach Sandstorm. Now, due to the nature of this attack, anyone in the organization can be a target. The attacker is mainly just looking for a foothold into the organization's systems, or they're attempting to verify username and password pairs to sell to other attackers. Now, let's talk about another type of brute force attack, credential stuffing. Credential stuffing is like password spray in that attackers are attempting to log in with lots of accounts using bots and automation. The key difference here is that with credential stuffing, the attacker is using compromised username and password pairs that were sourced from breaches in other services and stuffing them into a new service. Because of the unfortunate reality where we hear about new breaches frequently, this also means that each breach causes a potential attacker's list to grow. Now, credential stuffing exploits the tendency for users to reuse passwords across services like we talked about earlier. And because of this, the target really can be anyone in the organization. If they've reused their credentials from other services, they're a target. You can see here that credential stuffing makes a large portion of authentication traffic, which is a frightening statistic, showing just how common this attack pattern is. Now let's shift gears away from brute force to another category of attack, phishing. And you're probably familiar with phishing to some degree or another, so bear with me here. Phishing is a type of social engineering attack to steal user data like login credentials, credit card numbers, or other sensitive information. In the context of identity, it usually results in a compromised credential, allowing the attacker to gain access as that user to a corporate system or network. With phishing, it's all about the attacker tricking the victim into taking the bait and doing something harmful, like clicking a malicious link. Phishing campaigns can take many forms, and a couple of examples include emails, SMS, which is also called smishing, or voice, which is called vishing. Campaigns can broadly target an organization or specific targets within an organization, commonly known as spear phishing. And whaling is a phishing attack that targets high-profile users, which includes members of the C-suite. To get users to fall victim to a phish, attackers will come up with any number of pretexts or calls to action that will play on a user's emotions to get them to take the bait. The more targeted the campaign, the more personal details the attacker will use to make the phish more believable. And the majority of these attacks do still use email as the attack vector. But regardless of the method, once a user falls victim and has their credentials stolen, the attacker can then gain access to the system and access sensitive information. Now, MFA adoption has grown dramatically since the early days of the pandemic due to so many people having to shift to remote work. In February of 2020, only 35% of Okta workforce users used MFA. And in just 1 month, adoption was then at 50%. By January of 2023, MFA adoption climbed to 64%, with 90% of admin accounts using MFA. Now, this is great news, but the downside is that these numbers are unique to Okta, which is noted way above industry averages for MFA adoption. And this just means there's a lot of organizations exposed and vulnerable out in the world still. While MFA adoption does reduce the risk of some brute force and social engineering attacks, the bad news is that MFA does not guarantee that identity theft will not happen. In push notification abuse, attackers take advantage of a weakness in the authentication method, push MFA. In the normal case, this method will push a notification to a user's device, such as a smartphone or a tablet, and require them to accept it in order to pass the authentication check. This means that the user can approve an authentication prompt for a login that they didn't start or aren't even present for. And this is the exact issue with this method and why this type of attack is successful. The attacker doesn't even need to have the user's device. They just need to trick the user into accepting a prompt. And MFA fatigue falls into the category of push notification abuse. A bad actor can exploit push MFA to repeatedly send notifications to an end user with the goal of flooding notifications to get the user into accepting the prompt purely because they're just frustrated or exhausted from having to continuously hit yes or accept. And in either case, the result is the same. The bad actor gets authenticated as the user. These attacks are often preceded by other social engineering attack vectors, such as phishing, to gain credentials. And in some cases, attackers may combine this attack with social engineering tactics, such as trying to contact the user out of band, posing as IT or technical support, and getting them to approve the prompt. And this is how a popular ride-sharing app was recently compromised. Now, session hijacking is a broad category of attacks that steal session tokens to take over a session and impersonate a valid user. Because attack toolkits are becoming increasingly more available, this type of attack is on the rise. And since it occurs after a user has authenticated, traditional authentication methods, including MFA, don't do much in terms of protection. The ways in which a session token can be stolen include adversary in the middle attacks, which is formerly known as man in the middle. These attacks are really started from a successful phish, leading a user to a login page or a screen that's in the control of the attacker. Any information entered is intercepted by the attacker and then proxied to the real website. A more sophisticated version of this type of attack leave users completely unaware that they've even been compromised and gives the attacker an active session as the user. Cross-site scripting is an attacker will put malicious code onto a web page, which is then used to steal the session token. There's session sniffing, where an attacker may gain access to a user's network traffic through unsecured Wi-Fi and search for sessions and cookies. And then, of course, there's malware, where an attacker will infect the user's computer with malware, which either captures the session token or performs actions that were not authorized by the user. Session hijacking gives an attacker a foothold into the organization in order to do things like move laterally, escalate privilege to gain access to higher value targets, steal PII, and so much more. But now that we've looked at the different types of attacks, let's look at how to protect against them. Protecting against identity attacks breaks down into two general categories. There's the technical control, and then there's user education. From a technical control standpoint, we want to address the weaknesses that are exploited by various attacks that we spoke about. For example, improving password hygiene, moving towards more secure forms of authentication, and proactively protecting against threats. Most of you have already done this, but if you haven't, implementing single sign-on introduces centralized policy and visibility for our users, making things easier for both users and IT. SSO enables you to centralize access policies, making it easier to create and enforce strong policies across all of your resources for all of your users. And centralized visibility also makes it easier to detect identity anomalies versus policing each of the dozens and dozens of applications and sign-on events in your environment. And once you have SSO, it's easier to implement password requirements across all users. These requirements make it more difficult for attackers. And simple things like disallowing default passwords and requiring an immediate change for new accounts are controls that help prevent brute force attacks. Enforcing strong passwords and reducing the number of times an attacker can attempt to guess a password for an account. Using technologies like Okta's Threat Insights and CAPTCHA can stop automated attacks in their track by blocking bot-like and anomalous behavior intelligently without disrupting the user. And deploying not just multi-factor authentication, but phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication can halt brute force, phishing, and man-in-the-middle attacks in their tracks. Unlike traditional MFA, these technologies use strong cryptography and domain binding to ensure that users are logging into the appropriate site. And they can't be used on man-in-the-middle login pages to authenticate a user and won't work for the attacker. And these types of attacks become ineffective when using these types of authentication methods. And in that second category, education is critical to empowering users to become a powerful line of defense against identity attacks. Critically, warning against password reuse, encouraging good password hygiene like a long, unique passphrase that doesn't need to be rotated unless it's suspected to have been compromised, and helping users identify not just how to spot something suspicious, but also how to report it, are all tools to building a successful program. Consider implementing a passwordless authentication environment. Passwords are a significant attack vector. With 86% of web application breaches involving stolen credentials, password authentication can use a number of technology options to validate passwordless authentication can use a number of technology options to validate users with a high degree of assurance. When no passwords are there to remember or steal, you're eliminating a source of frustration for both your users as well as a significant vulnerability. And finally, consider automating the identity lifecycle. Connecting with HR systems to automatically provision, but also deprovision users based on their job role helps create a consistent approach to access that is faster and less error-prone than manual steps. It also reduces the risk of attackers taking advantage of orphan accounts. And these orphan accounts are not monitored and may not be using the latest user authentication, which means they are even more vulnerable. Now, we've covered hardening against identity-based attacks, but what can we do to detect an attack that's in progress? And more importantly, how do we respond to it? First and foremost, your access management solution should have awareness of what's happening in your environment and be able to adapt to changing context. Identity integrates to many, many different kinds of technology within your organization. So it can detect things like impossible travel. For example, a user attempting to log in 1,000 miles from where they were just logged in about 5 minutes ago. Or maybe logging in from a place that they've never even been before. Identity can also detect a new device or when something looks off, such as many multiple password attempts. And the next step is to take action. For example, denying the authentication attempt or requiring a stronger form of authentication. It's policy like this that allows you to ratchet up your security posture when you need it, while not impacting user experience when you don't. And it allows you to dynamically respond to these various anomalous conditions. Sending notifications to users about unusual events and, more critically, taking action when suspicious activity is reported allows you to turn your users into a powerful weapon against cyber attacks. And setting up automations to detect attacks like push notification abuse or other suspicious activity and automatically responding is another powerful tool that can stop identity attackers in their tracks. Examples of automatic responses include notifying your SOC about suspicious activity, suspending accounts, terminating sessions, forcing password resets, or placing users into a high-risk group which denies access to highly sensitive applications. And integrating identity with your existing security tools makes it easier to assess risk continuously before, during, or after authentication, making it easier and faster to detect, remediate, and take action. Now, I do want to take a moment to take a holistic look at all of the different capabilities that Okta provides in a single platform to help your organization protect, detect, and respond to these identity-based attacks throughout your entire user lifecycle. Okta Threat Insights helps protect your organization against anomalous activity and automated attacks, such as password spray, credential stuffing, or other brute force attacks, insulating your users from lockouts or other negative downstream effects. It aggregates data across the Okta customer base and uses it to detect credential-based attacks. Okta prevents these attacks from getting into the authentication stage, reducing the risk of valid users being locked out of their accounts. Universal Directory and Single Sign-On gives you a holistic view of your users and centralized control over authentication policy and methods. And Okta Device Access extends that same secure MFA experience to how users sign in to their desktops, extending an extra level of protection to their devices. And Device Access can confirm a user's identity and grant access without even an internet connection. And with Okta, you can choose which authentication methods you want to use. We support a range of secure MFA, including adaptive MFA. Okta's adaptive MFA behavior detection analyzes users' behavior patterns and creates profiles of typical patterns based on previous activity. You can configure policy rule that responds automatically to changes in user behavior. For example, requiring an additional factor if a user attempts to sign in from a different country or a different IP address. And Okta supports all major phishing-resistant authentication methods, including any FIDO2 WebAuthn options and PIV-CAC smart cards. Okta FastPass is a phishing-resistant, passwordless, zero-trust authenticator, suitable for managed and unmanaged devices. It not only resists phishing, but performs device checks and can deny authentication if the device does not meet access policies, like having an up-to-date OS version installed. FastPass can perform device checks in the background every single time a user opens up a new application. Organizations are implementing least privilege access to resources as part of their overall zero trust strategy, and that ensures users are giving only the minimum levels of permissions needed to do their jobs. Okta identity governance capabilities can inform risk-based cybersecurity programs by implementing fine-grained least privilege access controls consistently throughout your users and resources. An adaptive policy allows you to take risk into account and access decisions. You can look at a variety of signals for every authentication and provide a seamless experience to users where there's low risk and ratchet up security if something looks off. Workflows is an easy-to-use automation tool that provides a powerful way to automate detection and response to various attacks. And Okta Identity Threat Protection with Okta AI integrates identity-focused signals from your existing security tools, including your email security vendors, your SIEMs, your XDR provider, and more. It aggregates and correlates identity data with other logs in the IT environment and performs real-time risk assessments. Security teams can use this enriched data to instantly spot anomalous behavior throughout your user sessions. Identity Threat Protection also adapts to changing session risk and orchestrates tailored responses like logging users out of supported applications, sending notifications to your incident response team, or triggering reauthentication. Okta also offers a real-time syslog that IT teams can use to troubleshoot and address security issues immediately. And these pre-built reports can help admins detect potential security risks. All of this is part of the Workforce Identity Cloud, a unified platform that will combine identity and access management, privileged access management, and identity governance under a single platform. And I'd like to leave you with this thought. It's been said for a while that identity is the new perimeter, but identity's role doesn't stop when a user or an account is authenticated. Identity needs to constantly change and adapt to this new modern business environment and the adversaries hoping to exploit it. Identity is really the only technology that can connect to everything in your organization and tie them together. Your users, their devices, your applications, your security tools and technologies. And this means that identity is also a prime target for attackers. Identity should work with your existing security tools to amplify their signals so that you can find and stop tomorrow's attacks sooner. And if you want to see how Okta can help elevate your security posture against identity-based threats, I encourage you to visit okta.com/free trial to test it out for yourself. Thank you so much for joining the session today and hope to see you soon.
Well, thank you so much for that in-depth presentation today. Okay, everyone, it's time for our Okta poll. Let us know what additional resources you'd like to see from them. I had so much good stuff that there is no time for questions on this presentation, but they will be following up as per usual with all those of you who ask questions. We also have a great handout from Okta, which is an anatomy of identity-based attacks. Now, that sounds like something we could use, so get that now. It is free. Keep voting in the poll. Also, while we get to our next prize drawing, for this one, we have got a $300 Amazon gift card, our next one. And the winner of that card is Kayung Shin from California. Congratulations to you, Kayung. You'll be hearing from us ASAP on getting your prize. And with that, folks, we need to hurry along to our next presentation in the MegaCast. And this one comes from Rubrik. Presenting for Rubrik today is Seema Katuria, Senior Product Marketing Manager for Security. Seema is ready to go, and I cannot wait to hear from her. So, Seema, you have got the floor. Take it away.
Hi, I'm Seema Kathuria, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Rubrik. Thanks for joining me today to learn how to enhance your organization's cloud security posture with Rubrik. I'll talk about some of the cloud security challenges that our customers have experienced, a proposed solution in cyber resilience for meeting those challenges, and how Rubrik specifically can help your organization. Let's start by understanding, why is cloud data so difficult to secure and recover? Well, what we've found in our experience over the past 10 years, and today where Rubrik has over 6,000 customers, many are operating heavily in the cloud. And one of the core challenges is that we're seeing fragmentation that happens. Data is scattered everywhere across different environments, different services that are in the cloud, SaaS applications. There's sensitive data that's bleeding across those environments, and all the data is protected differently depending on what environment you talk about. What we'll see typically in the cloud is the way that folks are backing up and recovering data is using cloud native backup tools, or they will script backups and dump them to storage. On premises, the team will do something differently. And when it comes to recovery, there's certain processes, such as for SaaS apps, that are different than what happens when you're doing recovery on premises or in the cloud. So again, the challenge is when you're recovering from a ransomware attack, the tools you're going to use will be different. Yet it's all interconnected in reality, just with these hybrid environments and more applications that are getting onboarded. Usually also there's involvement of multiple teams that are going to need to touch that data using different tools, and data in the cloud is very much under attack. We've seen as far back just as 2021, for the very first time, cloud ransomware attacks surpassed on-premises attacks for the first time. And it continues to be a major threat vector. Hackers are now more and more stealing credentials and then logging into those cloud environments and doing malicious things with the data, ultimately. You're also being asked by your board, from your executives, a number of different questions from external stakeholders with regards to how can you recover from a ransomware attack that happens in the cloud. It's possible that your organization and others like you might have a blueprint for how to recover in the case of on-premises data. But have you ever actually tested this in the cloud? And how confident are you that you can recover your data in case you have a cloud-based attack? And who would actually even own this process of really managing data risks in the cloud? Is it a cloud application owner? Is it a central operations team? Also, how will you understand your sensitive data footprint in the cloud? How simple or hard is it to actually do that in a practical basis continuously, understanding where sensitive data might be leaking? Also, how can you produce a report for the CEO that would show which data is most at risk of being exfiltrated in an attack? What if someone logs in and steals data? How will you actually recover in that scenario? These are the kinds of questions oftentimes you need to be able to answer. And these are the core challenges ultimately that many organizations are facing. At the end of the day, Rubrik can help. Rubrik can really help you think about how to protect that cloud data in a different way. A replacement essentially for really cloud native backup tools due to some of these challenges that are being faced by organizations. Let's go into a little bit more detail on the specific challenges with cloud native backup tools. For instance, we can look at, say, AWS backup. We can look at Azure backup. The way that cloud native backup works is that you're going to have to set up these individual components that are shown here in red and manage them at an individual account level. Here we're showing, for example, 6 different accounts. You have to go in and set up backup jobs for each and every account at each account level. You'll also layer on some kind of a visibility tool or reporting on top of that and ensure that it is all secure. Then the recovery of cloud data assets is also done at the account level. Lastly, where the data sits is on some of the most expensive tiers of storage. And there's not a lot of intelligence built into how the data can move, to save money and save costs. So really, that's another big exercise, is how are you going to really optimize costs? On top of that, most of the folks that we talk to are operating across dozens or hundreds of accounts or subscriptions. As you can see here, you're going to have to literally set this up at every individual account. So it can be quite unruly very quickly. As you can also see here, most customers would operate in multiple regions. It's not like they're in isolated and single environment. They're usually having this global presence. And so every account, every region becomes a difficult management point. Usually there's a different owner of these cloud environments where data is being spun up left and right, making it pretty complex. Visibility is just that challenge in a single cloud, but imagine the fact that oftentimes customers are also having multiple accounts, different clouds that they're using. They are using more than one, oftentimes, maybe even 3. So imagine the visibility challenge in 2 or more clouds. You could not, for example, use AWS backup to recover things in Azure and vice versa. So there are a couple of underlying themes. There's lack of visibility and control. So customers often don't even know if they have a baseline backup, just as these DevOps builders and cloud app owners are spinning up new services every day. The security team, the operations team cannot really prove that we're getting a baseline backup of the new data that's going in the cloud. The second thing is, in addition to visibility and control, it's very hard to produce a report to a security team or to an auditor that says all the data is actually secure and recoverable from a ransomware attack that happened in the cloud, and that you have run a test to do this. It's very hard to actually have gone through that process. So again, the lack of visibility control and very hard to get a baseline backup are really true challenges with the cloud native backup tool type of approach. If you then look at it, in addition to cloud native backup tools challenges, when it also comes to data risks and security, I wanted to share with you Steve Schmidt, who is the current CSO for Amazon and former FBI section chief, who spent 15 years at AWS and believes that these are the questions every board of directors should be asking their CISOs. First is, what visibility do you have to the data? Most companies don't have really an ongoing catalog of their entire collection of data assets, particularly as those data assets are growing and growing. And without knowing actually the information, they can't really tell which doors have been left unlocked and when a breach has even occurred. The other question to ask is, who has access and why do they have that access and for how long? Cyber attacks typically begin with a compromised identity. And so having legitimate credentials makes it really easy for a cyber criminal to commit a cybercrime, and it becomes very difficult for that organization to minimize the employee's reach, given that this is such a widespread type of a situation where it's oftentimes a compromised credential. So it's even more important to have visibility and to access on a continuous basis and to minimize basically the blast radius. Also, we know that there's no single layer of defense that's going to be 100% preventing attacks. And so it can't be 100% dependable either, no one technology. So boards really need to ask the CISOs, do you have a secondary line of protection? Can you respond quickly to a failure? And are you testing this out? Are you trying to be proactive in understanding what kind of risk there would be and how quickly you can mitigate risk if you were to go through an actual attack? There are a number of reasons as to why it's really hard to answer these board level questions. Two big things that I'd like to share here is data is continuing to grow everywhere. In fact, according to the Rubrik Zero Labs report coming out of our own threat security research in-house, we saw that there's been a 42% increase in overall data growth. And of that, 20% of the growth has been on-premises data growth, with 73% cloud data growth and 145% SaaS. So you can clearly see that data is growing quite exponentially across all three of these. Also, data is increasingly under threat. In fact, 94% of organizations in a survey had said that they'd observed an attack in 2023. And the average cost of a data breach has been at a historical high of 4.88 million, according to the latest IBM research. And they said that that had actually grown from 10% from the prior year. So we can see that clearly, although the fact is that organizations are putting in cyber defenses, they're actually invested in that, they're not able to, get ahead oftentimes in terms of data risks because they continue to just exceed their ability to really protect just the fact that there's data growth everywhere and the threats are not stopping. In addition to that, of course, we know that threat actors now are bypassing the traditional security defenses, making it even more challenging. And it's important to think about data management, data risk management in a different way. So what are you left with at this point then? The fact is that there's a continuous process of locating, classifying, protecting data that is really critical to your business across a hybrid environment. And it can be very overwhelming, especially as the data is growing. As we mentioned, new data is being introduced into the cloud, and there's different access changes that are happening all the time. Onboarding new applications, onboarding new employees to those applications, and continuously new applications are being introduced into the environment. It becomes really easy for you to lose the visibility into what new users are accessing what data, due to which it's even harder to control access to that data. We see that with the growing number of users, it's even harder and harder to really manage that access. In addition, we see that cloud costs continue to grow. More and more data is being produced in the cloud. And the adoption of generative AI is something that will probably not be stopping. And if anything, we'll see that to continue to grow over time. But it's even more important to manage that data in terms of understanding what data goes into those generative AI models. And so having an insecure approach to Gen AI is not desirable either. And you need to try to get ahead of it by adopting secure data mechanisms that give you visibility up front before you use that data in generative AI. It's also becoming clear that if you have a really low threshold for data risk, it's going to be more and more important to have that visibility up front and also to detect data threats as they're happening and recover quickly in case you do have to unfortunately go through a security incident. This is where we found also that Rubrik Zero Labs said 98% of organizations are reporting significant data visibility challenges for all these reasons, as we said. The data growth compounded with data also being less visible as it's created so quickly in the cloud. So what is a proposed solution? Cyber resilience is a approach and a thinking that we recommend at Rubrik to our customers when they're asking us, how do we get ahead? How do we understand our scale of data risk within our cloud environments? There are three parts that we really want to share here when we think about cyber resilience. The benefit of cyber resilience, kind of an approach going beyond traditional, largely preventative focused security approaches, is here you can really think about data risk in a very proactive way. You want to be able to proactively understand where that risk is in your sensitive and business critical data up front by providing a data backup that is immutable, meaning that you can maintain data integrity even in the case where you have a security incident and that data gets compromised. You'll have an immutable data backup you can go back to. The second benefit is you can understand data and user context up front. With cyber resilience, which includes data security posture management, you're going to be able to get visibility into where your sensitive data even lives in the cloud, and you can actually classify the data so you have a better sense of what kind of data lives where and be able to limit the access to it. You also can get user context. You can understand which are the highest risk identities so that you can limit their access to sensitive data beyond what they should have. By also looking at data from a classification perspective, you can now understand which data is allowed or not allowed in generative AI kind of models. And we can be more proactive about limiting the attack footprint in case sensitive data gets accidentally leaked. You can get ahead of that in generative AI. You also want to reduce the overall data footprint. You want to be able to save costs. We talk about cloud costs going up. So one of the really important things is to understand where you have redundant data, where you have stale data, so you can actually eliminate that data and have less, obviously, cost in terms of backing up, and then also less cost in terms of the potential risk were that data to be leaked if it were sensitive data. The second more important piece also in cyber resilience is the ability to really manage and detect threats as they're happening and to be able to then take action through your existing security tools potentially. By actually detecting data threats early, you're going to be able to get ahead. You're going to understand where you have anomalous and suspicious data activity, going ahead and remediating that particular user, maybe isolating them until that particular data threat can be mitigated and allowing them then to reestablish themselves as a valid user. And the final part, if in the unfortunate situation where an organization is going through an attack, they want to be able to recover quickly after it, reduce their recovery time objective. They want to identify and restore their data to a known clean recovery point. They want to be able to speed response and recovery through things like out-of-the-box integrations of their data security tools with their existing other security tools, a SIM or SOAR solution, their XDR solution, using the best of what they have and they've invested in to recover quickly by combining the best of cyber resilience tools with these. Now let's talk about how Rubrik can help you. Rubrik can help you achieve complete cloud cyber resilience. The first thing to note is Rubrik is all about unification. That's our core value proposition. We unify all of your cloud data protection, the backup of the data, the governance of the data, the security to a single control plane called Rubrik Security Cloud, or RSC for short. Rubrik Security Cloud is shown here on the bottom. And in a cyber recovery scenario, so like a post-attack, the workflow to recover the data would be identical. Whether you're recovering an Azure VM, an S3 bucket, Amazon, or an M365 user, it's all the same experience on the worst day of your life. You could do the recovery really fast if you do get hit with a cyber attack. And that's the kind of confidence that we can give you as Rubrik has helped so many organizations like yourself. And then secondly, we make the data immutable. You can trust that the integrity of the data. So every cloud resource we protect, there's a few different workflows we can accomplish it with, but we'll lock the data down, make sure that if someone logs into your cloud account, they will not go and disrupt or delete your backups. That is really important. And we give you flexibility because ultimately we can integrate with all the native processes that your cloud team is using today already. And so say they're building with Terraform or infrastructure as a code, none of that has to change. Rubrik will tie into those processes and while giving you also a centralized view that when you have to hit the red button and do a ransomware recovery, it's going to be very simple. So it's really about being able to have this unification of being able to recover your data no matter where it is, be it in the one cloud, multi-cloud, on-prem, or even in a SaaS application. We want to give you the assurance that you'll have an immutable data backup solution that's going to help you in the event that your primary data does go down and it gets compromised in any way by an attack. Next, I'd like to share how the Rubrik Cloud Cyber Resilience will actually work in your environment. The first key tenet of what we're delivering is certainly going back to that key challenge we talked about in the beginning, the visibility you're going to get out of the gate, the ability to control the access to that data. When you plug Rubrik into your environment, the first thing we'll do is automatically detect all the different cloud objects, and we can show you what is actually being protected by Rubrik. Is there sensitive data that isn't protected in the cloud by Rubrik? Well, you would know that because we'll have a bunch of pre-canned filters of sensitive data. And if we don't really see that any of those are fitting in that particular filter, that means it's not protected by Rubrik yet. This is all done again through Rubrik Security Cloud, which contains data security posture management as a key component, giving you that visibility and control into your data, understanding where sensitive data is today so that you can actually then create policies around it. The second big thing we'll do is contextualize the threat landscape. We'll show you where there are users that could be accessing sensitive data buckets that they shouldn't be. A common challenge, for example, customers come to us with is that they have these massive multi-petabyte object environments in S3 or Azure Blob, and they have like no idea what data is inside it. Who has access to it there, and what are they doing with that data? So we can help you in real time to mitigate the risk and show your security team what data in your cloud environments and SaaS environments is most likely to be infiltrated in a cyber attack. This is also done with the help of Rubrik DSPM or Data Security Posture Management, is giving you that visibility upfront on which users have access to which data so you can reduce that overall blast radius come time if there were an attack. You don't want to have a number of users. You would want to really limit which high risk users are actually getting put at risk during that event, that security event. So this is all about understanding and monitoring for that activity up front, be it anomalous behavior, be it suspicious activity from a data perspective. It's between user and data that we'll be able to give you that visibility. The third point, once you have those two things, the data visibility and control and reducing that risk footprint from a user access perspective, you would be able to understand what you're actually protecting. You can actually apply Rubrik protection to and create a resilient copy of your data. We will make sure it's immutable so you can really validate and know that the integrity is not going to be lost. We'll give you isolated recovery points in your own accounts and subscriptions, and Rubrik can even host them. And in some cases, there's a lot of options, but we make sure that if you were getting hit with a ransomware attack at any point, the data would be locked down and you can observe it. If you're hit with the attack, we can tell you the blast radius of the attack, how many identities actually were impacted. We can tell you if there was sensitive data that got leaked as a result of the attack. So this is really important granular visibility you would really need right away if you got into a ransomware attack situation. We can minimize any operational disruption by allowing you to, again, recover to a really well-known clean recovery point pretty quickly. And finally, with all of those three things, underpinning all of it is TCO. At the end of the day, one of our core value propositions is we deliver to customers the ability to reduce their overall cloud backup spend by 25% or greater based on how we lifecycle and tier the data. With Rubrik, when we take backup snapshots, we can move them directly to object storage, bypassing the snapshot tier altogether or the hot tier that the cloud-native tools would typically store data on. So that results in significant cost savings against what you're spending today. And this becomes a self-funding technology where you really redirect the money you're already spending today on operational backup and get a more resilient solution at a lower cost for the reasons we just said. And Rubrik DSPM is enabling you to get that visibility into data that's redundant or stale and not being used as well to really give you that extra cost savings. Don't back up data you're no longer using and don't put it at risk either. So here you have a summary of the Rubrik Security Cloud, which is a platform that delivers the data security posture management piece plus the cyber recovery piece that we talked about, both being so critical for you to have a more cyber resilient posture for your organization. On the left here, you're going to see a number of the capabilities like data backup that we talked about. You can have a lot of the recovery capabilities across on-prem, across cloud, across SaaS, as well as unstructured data or NAS, what we call the NAS or unstructured data sets. And so it's really important to understand that we can provide that DSPM cyber recovery for a variety of different workloads that you might be using today. On the right, you're going to see a number of our integrations. When you look at the security side, we can do things like, of course, doing your data discovery classification, sensitive data that we can uncover in your cloud environments. We can contain threats, helping you during that situation where you might be having an anomalous detection of something that shouldn't happen. We can also help with cyber recovery. And so it's really spanning this combination of DSPM and cyber recovery, and also making your other solutions work for you. So we can even share data context if we've discovered some sensitive data that is at risk. When we've discovered a user that's actually accessing that data and shouldn't be, then we can send that kind of data context to different tools that you have already. That threat intelligence can be fed into like a Zscaler, CrowdStrike, Palo Alto Networks, and other security tools. In this case, one example would be Zscaler. They can watch the data paths in the network, but they don't really understand which application it belongs to and the sensitivity of the data and who has access to that data. So with our intelligence, they would actually use the intelligence we have and be able to stop an attack in real time. So it's the power of the better together about with Rubrik being that having that visibility into data and user context, sharing that out with a Zscaler in this case. We also recently announced the partnership with CrowdStrike, wherein they are their XDR platform called Falcon and our own data against security posture management, cyber recovery, overall cyber resilience platform come together. So the security ops team has a single place for data and their infrastructure security from the XDR perspective to recover and to remediate threats. So really giving you that end-to-end visibility into taking action with the CrowdStrike XDR platform. And more to, of course, come over time, but we encourage you to, bring forth your ideas about what you would like to see more from Rubrik to help you be more cyber resilient. Thank you for your time today. And again, to learn more, I would recommend you go to www.rubrik.com. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Seema. Great presentation. I'm throwing up the poll question for Rubrik. Let us know what additional information you would like to get about their solution. Some great stuff here. Now, Seema is not able to take questions today, but she will be, she and the Rubrik team will be following up with all the questions that you do ask. We also have a link from Rubrik on how to get more information about their solutions in the handouts section. So remember to keep checking the handouts. All right. Thanks to everybody who's responding to the poll. That feedback is so important to us and to our sponsors. I'm going to leave it up here for another minute or so before we move on. And we have got another gift card to give away in the meantime and another another Lego at. So for this presentation, the winner of the $300 Amazon gift card is Emily Stanley from Indiana. And the winner of the big Lego Star Wars at is Reed Duba from Michigan. Congratulations to you both. Great stuff there. Enjoy your Legos, Reed. Okay. And with that, we are now coming up upon our final presentation of the MegaCast. Everyone, hope you've been having fun. I sure have been. This final session today comes from Veeam, and presenting for Veeam is Kirsten Stoner, technologist in the product strategy group. So Kirsten is ready to go. Thank you so much for joining us on the MegaCast today.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the MegaCast today. And you know what they save the best for last, wink, wink. But I appreciate.
That's what I was just going to say. Exactly.
Yeah. I
appreciate so much.
being here.
Absolutely. You have now got the virtual mic, so you can take it away.
Awesome. Cool. So let's get started. Hello, everyone. I'm Kirsten Stoner. I am a technologist at Veeam. I've been at Veeam now for about 10 years. So working with our core platform and also specializing in our monitoring and alerting tool at Veeam. So I'm excited today because we're talking about enhancing public, private, and hybrid cloud security posture. And security is something that is top of mind for every IT professional and is a very important topic to discuss. So thinking about this presentation, I kind of wanted to just set the stage of just, an overall idea of the importance of security and what a good security posture is going to help you do. So really, it's going to help you protect against data breaches. And it's also going to help you meet compliance with regulations. So thinking about protecting sensitive data, ensuring that data integrity, so that you can make sure that you're meeting global regulations like GDPR or HIPAA. It's going to help guard against cyber threats. So a good security practice is going to prevent unauthorized access, and it's going to also help you detect and respond to cyber threats. So allowing you to identify suspicious activity and potential breaches in real time. So then you would be able to mitigate the attack to the best of your ability. And it wouldn't hopefully spread to the entire environment, right? It's also going to help preserve business continuity. A good security practice is crucial for preserving business continuity and ensuring that operations continue to run smoothly in the face of disruptions. Businesses today are required to be, 24/7, 365. So we want to make sure that we're there not only for, the people who work in our business, our employees have access to the applications and things like that to do their job, but also that customers have the access to, access their data or be able to log into your website or be able to call you up on the phone because the phone lines are still working, right? So making sure that we're preserving that business continuity is very important. And enhancing customers' trust, right? A strong security practice is going to build customer confidence, and it's going to make sure that they know that you're committed to protecting their data. So I took some slides from a data protection trends report, and the data protection trends report is a survey where we surveyed 12,000 business and IT leaders about their data protection strategies. And this is an anonymous survey. We survey businesses in a variety of industries, using a variety of different solutions for security and data protection. And so we asked them a bunch of questions. So one of the questions that was asked was, how many ransomware attacks has your organization suffered in the last 12 months? And you can see here that 75% of organizations suffered at least one ransomware attack. And not only were organizations hit once, some were even hit multiple times. So think about if you had to go through one ransomware attack, what if you had to go through 2 or 3 or 4 within 1 year? So this is really important to realize because, cyber attacks are more common than we think. We might be thinking, this is never going to happen to us. We have the best security in place. We're following all these guidelines. But even the best security in place, might let something through. According to this research here, 3/4 of businesses experience this. So it's really important that we, have our defenses in place, but also we try to find the vulnerabilities. We try to identify the security holes within our environment and secure them. And now that can be easier said than done, but it's important to be able to know where we are vulnerable. And this leads me to the next slide. And this is really talking about, the most common causes of outages an organization experienced. And you can see that a cybersecurity event is the most common and most impactful outage that an organization experienced. So this is telling us that we need to be ready for this to happen. We also want to keep in mind that that is not the only outage that the organizations experienced. They're still experiencing hardware, application, and software failures that they need to be prepared for. So I just wanted to emphasize that not only do we need to be prepared for a cybersecurity event, but we can't forget about these outages, these other types of outages that could affect our business continuity, and can cause disruption. And all environments are equally vulnerable, right? So this is the reason why I'm bringing up these statistics, because, no environment is really, bulletproof of a cyber attack. All these environments are, experiencing cyber attacks, right? So really, when it comes down to it, it's not a matter of, if, but a matter of when. So this leads me into, with the talk of security, should we trust the QR code? Yes, Keith. I'm sorry I didn't mention that earlier. And when I was looking at that slide, I realized that I didn't even bring that up. But this QR code here, this is really going to take you to the report that I'm talking about. So it's going to take you right to the ransomware trends report, so you can dive a little bit deeper on these statistics. So this brings me to the importance of backup, because a lot of times we hear in the industry that, the best way to recover from a cyber attack is to have a secure backup. And this is true. Ransomware is not a matter of when, it's a matter not, I knew I was going to mess it up. Ransomware is a when, not an if, right? And cyber is not the only disaster to plan for. So when we're creating our disaster recovery plans, we need to account for cyber as well as those other outages. And data is your responsibility. You think about, even thinking about a shared responsibility model, it's our data, it's our responsibility to protect it, and it's our responsibility to make sure it's secure. And the first step in really thinking about secure recovery is, having a backup, testing those backups to make sure that they're recoverable, monitoring that data. So you're monitoring your backup jobs, you're making sure they're finishing successfully, you're monitoring the backup job, the amount of data those backup jobs are storing. This can help, let you know how much data change rate there is, right, in those backup jobs. We're making sure that we're monitoring activity in our environment. So we have backups, we have restores. So making sure we're monitoring who's restoring what. Are there any redirected restores that these restores are supposed to be happening? And we're monitoring for suspicious activity. Next, we want to think about immutable and air-gapped backups. If you go to restore and you realize that your backup data is corrupted as well, you're not going to have any data to restore from. So when we think about backing up, testing backups, monitoring backups, we also want to make sure that we have a immutable backup or an air-gap backup that we have to make sure that that data maintains its integrity and it's safe from being changed or deleted. And then we think clean restores, right? You don't want to restore corrupted data back into production. So what can we do to make sure that when we have our backup, we can restore clean data back? Is this making sure that we restore into a lab environment for further forensic analysis? Is this being able to run an antivirus scan on that backup data before restoring? Or is this, making sure that we restore to a site that is, a clean site, like maybe to the public cloud or a service provider or something like that to get our business back up and running. And backup is also important to ensure that we're meeting compliance requirements, making sure that we're maintaining the retention of our data for a certain amount of time based on different regulations, making sure that we're protecting that data and different things like that. So what are people looking for in backup solutions today? So we're asking businesses, right, which of the following would drive your organization to change its primary backup solution to a new solution? And you can see that really the main driver is improving reliability and success of backups, but they're also wanting a backup solution that can help with ransomware. It provides enhanced detection and remediation capabilities for cyber ransomware. So they're really looking for both of these things when they're thinking about backup solutions. Now, there's other factors they think about, right? Thinking about how they're going to protect different workloads. Maybe they're looking for a cloud-based service. Maybe they're looking to move on premises to the cloud or things like that. But really, when we take in consideration all of these factors here, two main ones really pop up at the top, right? So this is what we would consider a modern solution for today's modern business, is having a cyber integrated and hybrid flexible backup solution. So the number one request with backup is that we make sure that it's cyber integrated, right? We have these capabilities to, detect anomalies, suspicious activity within the backup data. We have the option to perform antivirus scans before we restore the data. And then we also have these integrations with security vendors like Splunk, Palo Alto, and different things like that, right? They want to be able to also have mobility across clouds. The hypervisor landscape is changing. The cloud landscape, no one wants to be in a cloud lock-in. So people want to be able to have mobility. They want to be able to move their data across clouds and be able to store it in the cloud of their choice. And they also want manageability. The easier it is to manage their backups, it's going to be easier for them to, make sure their data is protected, make sure they're able to restore. They want to be able to manage all their backups within one solution without having to necessarily have different pinpoint solutions for different workloads. So what can we do to combat this, right? So what are some strategies that we should consider when we think about securing our public, private, or hybrid cloud security, right? And the first is really to implement multi-factor authentication. This is really going to add an extra layer of security to your data, avoiding, unauthorized access. Next, we're going to use strong identity and access management. This is going to help properly manage user permissions, roles, and make sure that only authorized individuals have access to sensitive data systems. It's also important that when we think about, managing user permissions, that we are managing them effectively as well, right? We're removing permissions from users who no longer need permissions to that data anymore. If an employee leaves the company, we're taking away their permissions. We're not, forgetting about it. So just staying on top of these things is really important. We're encrypting the data both at rest and in transit. So this is helping, maintain that data integrity, right? If the data is intercepted, they're not going to be able to read that data because it's encrypted. Regular security audits and monitoring. So just continuously monitoring your environment for suspicious activity and performing regular security audits is really going to help. This is going to be able to detect so that suspicious activity earlier so that you can mitigate the spread of the attack. Consider adopting a zero trust model. Now, this is something I've been hearing about for a while now. And this is just going to make sure that this framework requires all users, whether inside or outside the organization's network, to be authenticated, authorized, and continuously validated. So making sure we're thinking about how can we have separation between our production environment to our backup environment, or even just different aspects of our environment. How are we controlling the access to them? Have a good backup and disaster recovery plan. The worst case scenario is that you get hit with a ransomware attack and you're not ready for it. Or, you get hit with a disaster, a ransomware attack, and you go to restore from your backups only to realize that they're not recoverable, right? So a backup and disaster recovery plan requires proper planning, and it requires proper testing. We want to remember to test our plans. So when that ransomware attack inevitably happens, we know, okay, so we have our air-gapped backups here. We have a copy of backups that are in our immutable repository here. Which backups can we restore from? Which one has the lowest recovery point objective? How long is it going to take for us to get back up and running? Have we tested our recovery time objectives? Have I tested the restore of this application that my employees rely on, so I know how long the downtime is going to be? So this is all stuff that we want to consider before the disaster actually happens. We want to make sure that we're educating and training our employees. So this is really important as well, because we all have gotten these emails where, it doesn't look that suspicious, but something in our head is telling us that, hey, this doesn't seem right. Or why would this person be, emailing me this? So making sure that we're telling our employees, hey, don't always trust every link. Like, I think, who was it earlier with the QR code? Keith, I think it was. Maybe we shouldn't trust that link, but you can trust that link. I tested it earlier, so you should be good to go. And then lastly, using cloud security tools. So a lot of these cloud platforms have cloud native security tools and services provided within those platforms, within those clouds. So research these tools, work with them, get them set up in your environment, so that that you're using these native tools that were built specifically for the cloud, right? So where does Veeam come in? Veeam is purpose-built for powering data resilience. Now, if you've been following Veeam for a while, I'm not sure if a lot of you have, or maybe you haven't, maybe you're totally new, but Veeam's foundation is data backup. That's what we're known for. But as we have seen the IT infrastructure evolving and changing with these new sophisticated cyber attacks coming in and trying to get our data, we've evolved. We know it's not just backup anymore. We also have to be able to recover that data. We have to provide multiple ways that we can recover that data. So thinking about, using something like instant VM recovery, being able to instantly restore that data within less than 5 minutes or less from the backup file. Being able to restore that data to the cloud, for example, is also something to consider, right? Providing you flexible recovery options. So when that disaster happens, you're able to recover what you need in the time that you need it. We're also thinking, data freedom. Nobody really wants to be locked into a certain vendor or a solution. So how can we do this? Well, we need to provide data freedom, the ability to, restore workloads across clouds and on premises to the cloud, back on premises, and different things like that. So really providing you that freedom to perform the restores where you need them. Next, we have data security. Like I mentioned earlier, these cyber attacks are getting more sophisticated, more innovative. They're utilizing, AI, things like this to get into our environments. So we need to have security tools in our arsenal for our customers to use to protect their backups. So thinking about with Veeam, we have inline scanning to be able to, when you're backing up that machine, you're able to actually perform scanning on that backup data to look for these suspicious activities, these suspicious file extensions, common notes that ransomware leaves in the data, right? So making sure that we're looking for all this stuff so that we can let you know in real time, hey, this is suspicious. You need to do a little bit more further investigation. And then when we think about that, being able to secure the data when we're storing that data, right? So, if when you back up the data, you need to make sure that you're following the 3-2-1-1-0 rule, making sure that you have multiple copies of that data, two of which on different media, one off-site, one that's air-gapped immutable, and 0 chances of errors in recovery. So making sure that you're securing your backup repositories is very important as well, using immutability, air gapping, offline, and different things like that. And then lastly, data intelligence. And this is really where the AI comes in to the Veeam data platform. So we want to make sure that you're using your data to get intelligent insights about that. And you're also using AI to get more usability out of our products. So right now we have the Veeam AI Assistant, which is within the Veeam data platform. And it's really going to let you understand, how to set Veeam up, how to configure it the right way, right? So if you run, the best practice security analyzer on your backup infrastructure, and it's telling you, hey, you forgot to, set up immutable backups, or hey, you really should have this disabled on your backup server to prevent unauthorized access. Like, all these insights are going to be available to you. And then you can use the AI to really understand how to implement them, right? So with all these factors that Veeam has, it's really going to help power your business to maintain resiliency in the face of any disaster. So this is the Veeam data platform, and it's more than just backup and recovery. It's monitoring and analytics, and it's recovery orchestration. And we have, workload protection all across the board, whether you're running in the cloud, virtual, physical, you're using SaaS applications, or you're using some of these enterprise applications. Veeam is going to be able to protect that data. So that is what I have for you guys today. And I know there are some questions in here. So Adam asked, can Veeam identify early signs of potential data corruption or ransomware within backup files before they're restored into the production environment? Yes, Adam. So Veeam has the ability to run a secure restore before you restore it into production. So basically what this will do is we have native integrations, I think, with like the Windows antivirus, Symantec, and some other of the well-known antivirus solutions. And you can perform a scan before you restore your backups back into production. This is really going to make sure that you're not restoring that corrupted data. Another solution for this as well is, performing that secure restore in a lab environment so that you can make sure that, everything is, working as it should. Do some more analysis so that when you actually perform the restore into production, it's smooth sailing. What options does Veeam provide for air-gapped backups, and how does it ensure that those backups remain accessible and secure in the event of a ransomware attack? So with Veeam, you can do a replication. So that would be air-gapped. You replicate that virtual machine to a different data center. You turn that data center off. That machine off. And so that when you need to, you can just power up that replication, that replica virtual machine, and you can get back up and running. Another option would be to use something like tape, where you back up to a tape and then you store that offline as well. So basically, those are those options for you, Adam. Does Veeam determine the optimal cost path when it comes to backing up to multiple cloud platforms like Azure, GCP, or Amazon? So within the Veeam solution, we do have cost calculators available to you so that you're able to see how much it's going to cost you to back up those workloads and store them. So Adam asked, does Veeam also help facilitate tape backup processes? If so, what system software is supported? So yes, Veeam can back up to tape. Now, if you're trying to back up that tape, I don't believe that you can back up that tape with Veeam, if that's what you're trying to ask, but we can back up to tape. And to know exactly what tape is supported, you would have to check the help center and make sure you look at the system requirements. And I think I might have actually gotten all the questions here that were asked. I also want to note that we do have a really great handout available to you guys as well. It's called Mastering Hybrid Cloud Backup Cost Security and Management. And it really goes into, controlling cloud costs. It also talks about securing the cloud backup. So some of the things I talked about today, meaning, following that 3-2-1-0 rule, air gapping, zero trust, immutability, and encryption. So if you want some more information, definitely check out that handout. And thank you guys all for staying with me. I know you guys have probably listened to many, many sessions already today. So I definitely appreciate you sticking around. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kirsten, for being on and for that fantastic presentation. So educational and illuminating. Thank you for your insights in the Q&A. It's always a pleasure to have Veeam on, one of the strongest, most innovative companies in the industry. Thanks again for being here with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
And with that, folks, we are getting close to the end of our MegaCast today. I want to throw up the poll question. Please let us know what additional information you would like about the Veeam solution. We'll see it up there. And as Kirsten said, I want to also remind you about that great download. It's an ebook, hybrid cloud ebook, and it is free like all of our handouts. So if you want to get a free ebook that is talking about hybrid cloud, this is your opportunity to get it for free. So with that, I'm going to leave this up for another minute while I give away our last two prizes of the event here, but keep on voting in this poll. So the last $300 Amazon card of the event has been won by Jennifer Spizak from Arizona, and the last winner of our grand prize, that Lego Star Wars however it's pronounced, is Matthew Swartz of Missouri. So congratulations to all our prize winners today. We had a bunch of them. You'll be hearing from us soon on how to claim your prize. If you're not sure if you won or not, because maybe you came in late or didn't hear an announcement, have no fear. We will be reaching out to all of the prize winners, contacting you directly, so you will be contacted. And with that, folks, I got a question for you. Did you think this was a great event today? I sure did. I loved everything that was presented, and I learned a ton, which is one of the reasons I like being on these events and moderating them, because I learn as much or more than most of you probably. So if you agree with me, you should know that we can do these kinds of things for your company, for your solution. We can do specific custom events for you as well. Reach out to us at connect@actualtechmedia.com. You can see the MegaCast, EcoCast. We have other events. Again, the custom events are something we do a lot of as well. We can tune in events specifically for you. So reach out and let us know. And if you are interested in security, which is probably why you're here, know that in another week, we have another fantastic security event. This is an EcoCast that covers top networking and security principles for cloud deployments. That is one you don't want to miss also. It is going to be October 30th, the day before Halloween, and it starts at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Would love to have you sign up right after the event ends today, which is now, everyone. On behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank all of our presenters today for putting together awesome presentations and demos and Q&A sessions. And those vendors today that were here with us were TierPoint, Okta, Nasuni, Rubrik, and Veeam. That killer lineup was just so informative. Fantastic event for me. Finally, I would like to thank all of you for being here with us. As you know, if you've been on with me before, this is the best part of my day, is spending time with you. It was so much fun for me, and I cannot wait to see you in the next event. So that's about all for today, folks. You can get out of here and get to the rest of your day. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. See you next time.